Hey, everybody, welcome back. So I still have my friend Butch Stevenson here, retired law enforcement officer, wellness instructor, all around good guy. So I said we want to shift gears a little bit. And one of the things I wanted to talk about is recently we saw an attempt on the life of former President Donald Trump. And we all watched the video. We all saw what we saw, the YouTube videos from people who were there, the confusion, and the miraculous event where he just happened to turn his head. And if any of you have seen it, they've done a lot of recreations, and they show that if his head was still pointing straight, it would have taken the back lobe of his head off. But because he turned his head, it got his ear, and he survived. Now, you can say it's miraculous, you could say whatever, but it was absolutely amazing. So the reason I wanted to talk with Butch about this is that when he was with the sheriff's department, he had some experience working with the Secret Service when Trump came to visit when he was running for re-election back in the day. So, Butch, why don't you give us that background of what you had with that, where you were, your position, what was happening, and
So it started with uh, we had Secret Service. They in an area that we were a part of that we one of our buildings. They actually had some of the motorcades, so we got to deal with Secret Service there, and they were great. I wanted to walk up, take a look. I mean, they were good, but we set up. So what happened was the day of Trump flew into a school in Long Branch. I believe it was a middle school. It might have been an It was an elementary school. Flew into the elementary school, and I was on the Monmouth County Rapid Deployment Force, so we were there. Moser, which is the county SWAT team, was there. State Police, Department of Corrections had people there. I mean, you name it, all the locals were there. Um, Ocean Township, West Long Branch, all the areas, and they positioned people all around the perimeter, all along the route. The Secret Services work that we worked with were great. I was in the area that I was in the command post, in the area of the command post, and at the school, and we worked with them. They were fine, very accommodating. They let us know what to do, what not to do, how to handle things, and yeah,
so
it was.
so
I
let
mean,
me
obviously the president's there. He was a sitting president, and it
right,
was a different Secret Service, and so
right.
it was 100% different from what we just saw. Um, but they were great.
All right,
I
so let me ask you a couple of questions. As a outside agency, you were a county agency, county sheriff's
Yes.
department, right? And then you had the local police, all the agencies that were out there, local police departments. How did you all get involved? Did they invite you? Were you required to be there? Was there briefings? All these things that we're talking about now
So
in
I
the state of
mean, like, yeah,
Pennsylvania.
there were briefings. And like I said, I was there representing the Rapid Deployment Force, not so much the sheriff's office. We did have our canines there. We had our explosive dogs there, our patrol dogs. But yeah, they looked for assistance, so they reached out and they had the commanders or the chiefs or whatever from all the different organizations, whether it be MOSERT or the RDF or the local PDs, Department of Corrections. They were all there. So, and they would have briefings throughout until the day of, and then they had the after action even afterwards.
Now, time out right there. Department of Corrections was there also?
Yeah, you got to figure they do their SOG team. I mean, they have a special operations team, so they had some of their guys there. I mean, it's
Okay, and
just
the reason I ask that is because, as you know, from law enforcement, there's a huge controversy of whether or not our corrections officers are law enforcement officers. I say they are.
100%.
Here you have an instance where they're actually going out into the field with all the other cops, right? They're armed, they know what to do, they have a response team.
Yeah,
So I just want everybody out there who's thinking about says, no, they're not. They're security guards. They're not.
you know,
Corrections
and
officers
that's
are
it.
law enforcement officers.
And I've always said, talking to corrections officer that they always want to be law enforcement. I mean, if they did, some of them don't. Some of them always want to be, but like, just be proud of what you are. I mean, if you get the job, good. But you're doing a job I would never want to do.
Yeah.
And when we had a civil unrest that same summer in Asbury Park, we had basically three teams out there handling it. We had the Rapid Deployment Force, we had the state police had a team out, and the Department of Corrections had a team out there assisting with it, you know, and who better to deal with civil unrest but the Department of Corrections, because they know how to
Right.
deal with unruly people like that.
Well, there you go. So first of all, that settles the question forever, for anybody out there, and even people in our own profession, you know. And I don't like that. I always said that working in corrections was working the toughest precincts in America, because
Oh,
everybody in there
absolutely.
is dangerous and has done bad things. You know, out in the street, you might come across a bad person who did a bad thing. In there, everybody's in there because they did something bad. So kudos to our corrections brothers and sisters. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
So one of the things, it sounded like there was coordination between the
Yes.
Secret Service and the locals, and you were briefed and you were set up, and you found them impressive, I guess, from what it sounds like.
Yeah.
They did the right thing. Now let's look at Butler, Pennsylvania, where former President Trump is now holding this rally. And like I said, this is not to throw cold water on any of our brothers and sisters, but I think if we don't look at things realistically and lessons learned from situations, it can be bad in the future. I'm not going to talk about the individual officers. We've gotten limited information from the Secret Service. We saw that the head of the Secret Service, the director, had to step down. I don't know if you saw her interview,
Oh, yeah.
but she actually brought zero answers to the table. And when people ask me, civilians, like, why wouldn't she answer the question? There's only two reasons. They were incompetent, or there was an ongoing investigation that she can't release any information because there could be 19 terrorists that were part of this and they have to go get them first. Well, the fact that nothing's happened since then kind of tells you it was not 19 terrorists. Now, there could be more people involved. They're investigating, but her response was terrible. And, you know, leadership is so important in an agency. And you could see by the fact that she still has not gone to she went to the site, I think, one time a week later. Instead of I would be on a plane getting down there immediately to take command of that situation.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, so when we look at that and we see, with your experience now of having the same president come in, and the coordination, when you see all this reporting from Pennsylvania, anything stick out in your mind that you say, wow, that's not how we did it when we did it?
It was not really, only because I couldn't see, like, I remember how things were set up in Long Branch. I'm assuming it was set up the same way there, but I don't think so. I mean, we had the school had multiple counter snipers on it. We had any area that were might have had something or somebody that might have caused an issue. We were all over. I mean, I remember just hearing over the radio, car, you know, red Jeep. Check. I need someone to check it out on whatever street. Boom, they were there. That could have been going on, but the big difference, and I mean, we had communication constantly with the Secret Service. The locals, the state had constant contact with Secret Service. Where I mean, I believe I just I watched an interview last night where they were talking with some of the uh, local and state cops that said there wasn't much communication between the two.
Right.
And
That's an important factor. How did you have communication with all these other agencies? Because you all had different frequencies, different radios,
everybody, we had representatives in the command post, and it was constant. And they had like, so one of the things I handled was communications for the rapid deployment force. And I made sure that one of our radios was always there in case we stepped out, somebody from there stepped out. Moser had their team commander in the command post and a couple of people. So every group had a few people there, so there was a constant communication. So if they heard something, you could pass it along right away.
Excellent.
I'm
That's
hoping that's what they did, but out in Pennsylvania, but obviously we don't know
It
yet.
doesn't seem
It
like
doesn't
it.
seem that way.
Because we've had individual officers come forward and say there was no communications, there was no radios, the connection. Years and years ago, and I'm talking about 6 years ago, so that seems a long time when you're a dusty dude like me. I came across this company, the communications company, and they're called JPS Interoperability. They're in North Carolina, I believe. And I met the principals, amazing, brilliant men. And they saw this problem that agencies can't talk to each other. Now we're all on different frequencies because we get a better deal on the 400 frequency than the 800 frequency and the radios and local budgets. That's what's involved with all of that. And that's what you get, unfortunately, when you have disparity of all these different agencies. New Jersey is 537 municipalities. Everybody's got a chief, everybody's got a superintendent, you know, who
Yeah.
can talk to who, right? Everybody wants to control their own situation. But this company, JPS Interoperability, when I met them at a school security event, and they brought in this device. It looked like a radio holder. I mean, it had 20 slots in it. And basically, what they came up with was every agency involved in any kind of a thing, you could plug your radio into this device. And then at that point, every single person was
Wow.
connected on every frequency. You could have one of those cheap walkie-talkies from Dick's Sporting Goods and plug that in there, and you could talk to an F-16 pilot. It was an amazing device. And what they had told me was that they had actually sold it to New York City several years earlier, and all the equipment was in a basement on 9/11. It hadn't been distributed, hadn't put out, and we know what happened there when
Yeah.
nobody could talk to each other.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they had anything like that on scene. Obviously, it doesn't sound like you had it there. You guys had radios and human beings, which is good. Now you can all hear each other and say, hey, we
Yeah.
need this, that, and the other thing. You described something there I thought was pretty interesting. When you were getting all this information. Now, I've been involved in tax situations. I'm a hostage crisis negotiator, so I've been in the command posts. I've been talking, doing all that stuff. So I get it. I know what's going on. But for many people, they don't understand how much is going on when a thing like that is happening. You're talking about you have such a large area to cover, and now you've got somebody who puts eyeballs on somebody and says, hey, go check that red car. You got to have a team go there right away and find out who that is and clear that off, right? That's not a suspicious person, not a danger, right? When we look at the event in Pennsylvania, and we saw not just a good sight line from the sniper to the principal, but the best sight line.
Perfect.
Could not have been better. The one that was left unchecked. All the people were inside the building. They were not outside. And then we had civilians with cameras screaming, there's a guy in a roof, there's a guy in a roof, there's a guy in a roof. And that message, seemed to get pushed around. And apparently one officer went up the ladder that was there and saw the guy and came back down because he had a rifle. And then they still let the president come up on the stage.
Yeah.
That's the command I don't get. You think you have any kind of a danger, hold them off, keep them in a car. Right?
Yeah. Just for a couple minutes until everything clears out or make sure everything's okay. And they actually did that last night at an event. They actually kept them off stage temporarily.
Yeah.
And obviously, and that one of the frustrations and what's bad is the one thing that's brought everybody together, left and right wing, Republican, Democrat, is what happened, and they actually, this, as they said, transcends the aisle. And one of the things they brought up is how could they have let the president, because they could let him on stage. Who's to say they're not going to they wouldn't have let Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or President Biden on stage when
Right.
something like that happens? Who's to say that wouldn't have happened? So, and it was just a major breakdown. And every time they'd ask the Director Cheadle a question, it always came back to, well, the FBI is investigating, I can't comment.
And I found it so funny. She said that how many times?
Oh my
And then
God, I lost count.
We had Director Ray from the FBI on, and they asked him a question. He goes, you got to check with the Secret Service.
Oh yeah.
Everybody's doing this, and that's what I think has led to many people in our country losing faith in these major law enforcement agencies, federal agencies that used to be sacrosanct. I mean, the FBI was what was the golden perch of law enforcement. Excuse me. And a Secret Service, just absolutely amazing. And now we see that it's about leadership, not the men and women out there doing the job. We know that. When you were at the Sheriff's Department, you had an awesome leader, an absolutely tremendous leader, and therefore you had a tremendous agency. Agency where I was at, we had a great leader, an okay leader, and then a horrible leader, and followed by another horrible leader. And it basically took a preeminent law enforcement agency that we were and brought us down to basically, meager, just doing the least to get yourself in trouble because the leadership was horrible. So leadership is key to every organization, no matter what they say. The fish rots from the head down.
Yeah.
So I think when we look at this, who do we point to these positions? And I guess Cheadle was a qualified person. She had run other companies. She had been a Secret Service agent earlier in her career. But we all know lots of cops who are really good cops, but They don't make good sergeants, lieutenants, captains, or chiefs when they get in
Yeah,
that position.
yeah, and I had a chief when I worked in Interlake, and we had a woman come in towards the tail end of the department, and like she said, just because you're a good dispatcher doesn't mean you're going to be a good cop. Just because you're a good cop doesn't mean you're going to be a good sergeant, and all the way up. And they had one of the things they did. The director before Cheadle, he was he started at the bottom of the Secret Service and worked his way up, so he knew it from inside and out. And he was a Trump appointee. And I'm not going to get political, but it was soon thereafter that they took him out and put in one of their own. And I mean, unfortunately, not saying that he was any more competent than Cheadle, but you have something that works. Why don't you just keep it there, especially something as important as that?
Right. And I guess, most people may or may not understand the federal system. The Department of Justice answers to the president. And all the agencies under the Department of Justice, FBI, DEA, Secret Service, everybody answers to the Attorney General, the Department of Justice, who answers to the president. And I guess when you go in, you want your people, you want your own people in there. The problem we find is when people politicize these offices. I'm not saying that, she was a DEI appointee, but, was she the best? I don't care if it's a man or a woman that leads any agency.
Yes.
I think women are absolutely capable of leading. I know lots of great women leaders, but they have to be qualified, just like a man. You don't just put a man in there because he's a man. You put in the most qualified person. And did she come from her background as a Secret Service agent enough to run the entire agency, which has many, many tentacles? As you know, it's all across the United States, lots of people to protect, lots of things that they do. Was that the right choice? And when we see this weaponization of these federal law enforcement agencies, I think that's where we're seeing problems.
Yeah.
What did Director Ray say? He's being interviewed by the Congress, and he's answering questions. And I think he came out with more information because I think he learned his lessons watching her the week before Cheadle, going, I better give them something, at least if I give them some, how many bullets were fired? I don't know. Ask the, so he came with those answers. There were 8 rounds. It was this, there was that, it was this kind of gun, whatever, which was satisfying because we want some information. I would never interfere with an investigation, but we want information, right? We want to know what happened here. And the fact that we still don't know what happened here. What was that hotel in Las Vegas where that guy killed 58 people or whatever?
Oh, at the
We don't know
country music
anything
concert.
about that guy. The Covenant school shooter in Tennessee. We don't know anything about that shooter because there's political things that would make people really uncomfortable if they heard who the person was or their motivation.
Yeah.
But they don't tell us. They don't release the manifesto for this one, but they do release it for that one. It's a danger to the public because you start to lose faith in those agencies.
Yep. I was just about to say that. And they do. People stop trusting these agencies.
And we need to trust them as citizens. We need to be able to go
100%.
to them and help them. But
And it's probably only maybe 10% of the people in there that want to politicize. The other 95% of the people are agents or law enforcement officers that want to do the right thing and are trying to do the right thing and trying to help everybody. It's just that small group that are trying to politicize it.
right. And you know as well as I do, you might be a great sergeant, a lieutenant, or a captain, or a patrol officer, and you see what's right to do. But if the chief says, don't do that, I want you to do this, you don't go, well, we're going to revolt and do it anyway. Because a lot of my civilian friends say that, why didn't they just do it? They were just when you knew what was right. Well, you're in a hierarchical order, a semi-military thing like law enforcement. You don't just make your own decisions,
Yes.
right, wrong, or indifferent. That's how the system is set up to maintain control, right? But what we see is this, it's not the men and women who are doing the work. We know that in every agency, there are brothers and sisters. They're very good. The problem that we have is the top has been politicized. And that's why when you're saying you had a great person in charge and then you change administrations and now you bring in someone who's not so great. There was the chief of the Border Patrol was talking the other day. He came on and he saw what was going on. He was telling the truth about it when President Biden came in. This is an open border. This is dangerous, not right. They removed him. They pushed him out and got somebody else who would, toe the line. But you're seeing the Border Patrol people are very upset about how
Yes.
things are, right? So that leads me, I guess, to one of the things I wanted to talk about with try and tie all this together. We've seen I don't know when you decided to become a police officer, but when I took the test, there were 3 jobs and 650 people showed up to take the test. A few years later, the economy was really good and we had 5 positions, and I think like 200 people showed up. And as the economy took a dip and we needed people, hundreds of people showed up. That's not happening anymore. You're not
No.
getting hundreds of people to show up to be a cop anymore. With the wellness and the resiliency that you talk about and how that hurts people, do you think there's a connection between people saying, I don't want to be a cop anymore based on what's going on and that?
It's that. It's also what's going on in the world now, with the perception of law enforcement, and going back to 2020, 2021 with incidents that happened. Um, I think that the resiliency programs that they're doing, I think it's going to help bring things back. But right now, it's just hard finding people. I know when I left the sheriff's office, they were doing in the middle of doing a hiring, and it was where we'd ask for 75 people. We would get maybe 60 showing up. We asked for 75 people, and we had 40 something show up, and out of that, only X amount returned their applications because it was just a climate,
Sure.
of what was going on.
And I think that still exists.
Yeah.
I talk to officers from across the country, and I talk to administrators, and they all say it's a hard time right now getting the quality people. There's lots of
Yes.
people that will take the job
Yes.
because, hey, it's a good job, right? I'll take the job. But are these the people you want walking your streets, carrying a weapon, enforcing the law? Are they the best? And I don't care who they are. I don't care their lifestyle. I don't care anything. If they are the best people, then that's who you want to have on the job. Because when I teach about, pre-employment background, I don't talk about, there's only a certain kind of person should be a cop. There's lots of needs for lots of different kind of people. I don't talk diversity just for diversity's sake, but there are lots of places in law enforcement for lots of different kinds of people.
Yes.
You just got to be the best of the best to come out and answer the call to your house when you need law enforcement. So,
100%.
so we have a couple minutes left here. Um, do you see the officers that are left on the job that are there out there today? And you talked about the different feeling. I've been around for long enough to see cops when they went from heroes to zeros and back again, where now, defund the police, get rid of the police are bad, the police are racist and all that. Do you think that has an effect overall on law enforcement, on their mentality that could lead them
Oh,
into
morale,
dark
absolutely.
places?
Morale's been at an all-time low, and agencies are trying to do their best to maintain it, but it's difficult. And it's difficult because it's what they see. When we have our leaders calling for things like that, our representatives calling for things like that, defund the police or calling us racist, um, or when there's riots where officers are severely hurt or stuff like that, and then charges are being dropped. Yeah, it's going to hurt morale, and it's going to hurt. I think you're starting to see a turnaround with that because now you're having a lot of cities that defunded the police are now trying to fund the police again, but it's a little too late for them now. I mean, hopefully it comes back. And that's the problem is that, it's sometimes hard to unring that bell.
Yeah.
And
And I
that's what they're
think
trying.
even recently, I just heard Kamala Harris, the president, the wants to be running for president, right?
Yeah.
Candidate for president. And there's video of her saying things like, people who think that simply having more officers, it will lead to safety and security are absolutely wrong. Well, you can make an argument that just sheer numbers don't do that, but the reality is when you don't have enough or you have cops who are uh, not doing their job other than when they get sent to a call because they don't want to get indicted, charged, arrested, beat
Yeah.
up in the streets, you're wrong. She's absolutely wrong. How many times have you been in an agency where they did a personnel study and somebody came in and trying to figure out based on the number of calls and the size of your town, how many cops you need? Oh, you need 12 more cops. And the town manager maybe gives you one or takes away two.
Yeah.
All of us are overwhelmed. We know we can't answer the calls. We can't be proactive. And that I think every cop in the world knows the only thing that creates a safe community is proactive police work.
And was it
Reactive
Pittsburgh?
police work leads to a problem.
Is it Pittsburgh now on the midnight shift? They're running. I, I don't want to, I'm not exactly sure, but it's It's a absolute ridiculous amount. They won't answer alarm calls. They're not answering stuff like that. You know, it's coming in the morning. They'll respond to very serious calls. That's it.
Right.
Because their manpower is so low. I want to say they're running, I heard anywhere between 4 to 12 officers at night,
Yeah.
overnight.
And I've seen a lot of places where you can go online and report your crime and they'll get
Yeah.
to it when they get to it. And that's not the fault of the officers. That's the fault of
No, no, not at all. They're doing the
people
best they
thinking.
can.
You got to have police out there. So listen, Butch, I really appreciate you being on here. This was a good conversation. We have to get you back. It's important for every one of us as American citizens to understand that our police officers make a difference. They sacrifice their lives. They put off lots of things that everyone else does. You know, they work weekends, nights. Oh, boo-hoo, they work nights. You know what? That's because it's a calling. This is
Yes.
a calling. You know, a lot of people I know that complain, oh, well, who cares? The cops get paid a lot of money. When you're a plumber or you're a technician somewhere, great jobs, awesome. When you go to work every day, your family doesn't pray that you don't come home that night, that, you know, you could get killed. Law enforcement, we all know that going out the door. You strap on the gun and the badge and the uniform, you go out in the street, you may die that day. That's an absolute reality. And we have to be mindful of that.
Yes.
And when you see a cop, thank them for their service. Hey, thanks, officer. Appreciate your service, right? That it does go a long way. I know
Oh, it really does.
people do that. I do that with military and cops, and it's a good thing. So I want to thank Butch for being on here. And like I said, we'll get you back. And everybody else out there, stand strong, do what's right.
If I can
Remember
say
what we
real
said.
fast, Joe,
Go ahead.
Project Semicolon and Valhalla Project have a saying. A semicolon is used when a story could have ended but didn't. Um, your story hasn't ended, so it's now time to use a semicolon to make it go in the right direction. Stay because tomorrow needs you.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for having me.
Sure. And hey, brothers and sisters that are listening in law enforcement and military, you are important. Get help. Reach out to somebody, right? Reach out to me if you have to, and I'll point you in the
Yeah.
right direction. So remember what we say here all the time, everybody. Be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. We'll catch you down the road.